Hey, everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse, and you are our wonderful Patreon patrons. Welcome to the Patreon bonus story. Do we have a long show to do
Let's
for
get
you
right
today?
to it. Remember that the secret code word, if you want to send us emails or messages on Facebook or whatever, is Silverstone. That will be good for the next week, so use that.
You don't have to use it on the Patreon Messenger,
No,
but that's
just-
the only place that it works, because
Right.
otherwise we don't know that you're a Patreon.
Exactly.
I don't have Eagle laser vision.
All right, so let's just have a fun video to start off.
Bro, there is no human in this car. There is no human at all in this car. How? What? There is no human in there. How is that a thing? There is not a person in there. Yo, this car ain't got no human in it. Ain't no human in there. That's crazy.
Elon Musk, he made those. Everybody think Nikola Tesla made those. Elon Musk, he made those. And he's making the smart grid too right now.
So the person who's operating it, what if they're drunk? Then do they get the DUI?
That's crazy.
It's my car though.
This is yours? How does this work?
So here, let me show you.
This is exactly what I was talking about when I said that version 10 and Smart Summon is going to be advertisement for Tesla.
I love the end of the video where the owner of the car is like, no, this is my car. I called it. And the guy's like, what? And he's like, let me show you.
I'll show you.
That is so
Good work,
typical.
dude. Yes.
So typical of a Tesla owner where it's
Right.
like, let me show you.
Right. It's not your typical, hoitsy-toitsy car driver who's like, plebeian, let me drive off.
And let me talk about this whole idea of the cars selling themselves, or about telling a friend. This guy is now going to go tell all his friends about
Right.
this story that I just saw a car driving itself, and then the guy told me how it worked.
And you notice there's another guy who's like, Elon Musk made those cars.
I love the imagery of that, don't you?
Yeah.
I think one day they should put Elon on the line, and he should make the car.
an entire
Yeah,
car.
Yeah.
That would be really fun.
And then
he should
raffle
do
it off.
a YouTube series
Yeah.
about it. I'm serious.
Day-
I would
day at work.
really watch
Yeah.
Elon like, okay, so today we're gonna make the power pack, which of course is the most important part of the car.
Can you see the workers behind, like, Elon, get on with it.
We gotta-
Hurry up.
Come on,
Hurry up,
Elon.
dude. We got lunch.
The whole line's down. Let's go.
All right, check this out, Jesse. This is from a couple weeks ago in Contra Costa County in East Bay of California. Check this out. Just a little explosion. Yeah, so that was 2 storage tanks at an oil facility in Crockett. One of them was holding ethanol, and it was only 1% full. So that explosion you saw was just tiny dregs of ethanol left in the tank.
And then fumes.
And fumes.
Of course, because that's the... But I
and-
mean, just imagine... Okay, wait. So they were talking about toxic fumes.
Yep.
Because you burn ethanol and it's toxic?
Yeah. I mean, it's still a fossil fuel in the sense that you just burned a carbon-based fuel. Like,
Right. It's still
It's-
a carbon-based fuel.
Right.
yeah.
Everyone has been for the longest time like, ethanol, it's clean. No, it's not. If you ask any mechanic about cars that burn ethanol, they'll be like, the reason why you can't put more than 10% into the gallon of gasoline is because it just gums up everything.
Right. Which isn't necessarily true. What was that movie that we watched with Jason Bateman was the voiceover actor for?
I don't know. He's the
It was
voiceover actor for
called-
everything.
It was
So.
like it was something about fuel. It was a movie about biofuel, saying that basically you could do a lot higher percentage biofuel. It's just that a lot of car manufacturers don't want to switch their engine
Right.
computers to doing it. So,
But
still,
here's my
it-
point.
right,
Here's my
it's-
point. If you were driving along one day and there's this giant explosion caused by a solar farm or a wind farm, or Teslas or whatever, you'd be like, that's it. We got to put an end to that.
Right.
But instead, for 7 hours, a giant city is stopped completely. All the traffic can't
Right.
drive on the highway. Schools are shut down. People are had to forced to be sheltered in place.
Yeah.
Because of this, and it's like, oh yeah, well of course that should be allowed.
Right. And then I the thing that always bugs me about explosions and stuff like that is the air quality afterwards. How it's just sort of like, well, just wait.
Well, here's the other part.
There's no vacuum.
You're the
There's no
energy company,
helicopter.
right?
Yeah.
And your job is we make tanks and we store things
Right.
and we pump it. We have pipes. When something goes wrong, which inevitably it does, they're like, "Oh, we don't specialize in cleaning it. We don't. We have a plan though. Let me brush that off.
Right.
Okay. Page 407. Oh, we'll call the state.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, they have no plan. It's like if you bought a toilet and then it started to overflow or it was filthy and you were just like, I just bought a toilet, dude.
I was reading Blowout by Rachel Maddow about the oil industry, and when we had one of our worst accidents, remember, down in the Gulf of Mexico, and we had the oil spill, the Congress took all the oil executives, put them in a hearing, and were like, we're going to get to the bottom of this. And they looked at their oil spill management plans, and if you looked at ExxonMobil's at the time, nice big document, looked great. It had information in there like, call this guy, and he had been dead for 4 years. And it had things like, make sure you clean up so the walruses don't get hurt. There's no walruses in the Gulf of Mexico. Like, it just was full of crap. They just basically took some interns probably and were like, okay, go make something that's 400 pages long and it looks really hard to read.
Wow.
So once they got to the actual cleanup, the oil companies are like, we can't clean it up. We've got like giant sanitary napkins that you can throw on the oil spill and stuff, but it's not going to do anything. That's the same thing here. Once it blows up, they're not like, oh, we'll whoosh in with our super vax and
Right.
take care of it. No.
I know. I would almost imagine there being like a big helicopter with like, oh, well, we knew that it was some crazy liter tank, although it's probably measured in gallons because the United States. When we're gonna put a big dome over the top of
Right.
it, it'll put the fire out. It'll collect all of the fumes and we'll clean it. No.
You know what they do? They call the fire department. So all the local fire departments are now having to rush there to take care of this. That's your tax dollars paying for that.
Right. And for their accident, like it would be like if you filled your house full of fireworks. That was the insulation in the walls of your house. It caught on fire, and then you call the fire department like, "Oh, my house is on fire!" And they show up, they're just like, "What did you do?" Or if you just filled your house with ethanol. I mean,
Right.
and the crazy part is there were lots of other fuel tanks next to that big explosion.
A lot of
fireball.
what those fire trucks were doing is just cooling those off to make sure they didn't blow up. Because if they had, I mean, it was a tank farm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
next to a major freeway.
and they're freaking everywhere.
Yeah.
These tank things are
Yeah.
everywhere. Go onto Google Maps,
Yep.
go into the Earth view, and if you see a bunch of white dots when you're zoomed out, zoom in. Those are fuel tanks.
Exactly.
And they're everywhere. They're everywhere. Every city has them somewhere.
Yep.
Usually pushed into the worst parts of the city. It's so scary to think that those could basically all blow up one day.
Exactly.
And cause a giant fireball, a huge cloud of noxious
And they can
gas.
barely handle one of them blowing up. Imagine if you had
Right, that
a
was
domino effect.
1%
Exactly.
fuel in it.
I
Just
know. All right, that's why I need one of these, Jesse. Check this out.
what is this? Some kind of old fashioned? It's probably gas powered.
Nope. That is electric powered. That is a GE, a General Electric, 1970s. In fact, this is, I think, a 1974 Electrac. It is powered by batteries. Now, it used to be lead acid. I think this has been converted to something better. But that is mounted to a New Idea snow thrower. And this is a Benjamin Nelson YouTube video. So go check out his YouTube channel because he made this work, which is fantastic. But yeah, I want one because you can snow plow your driveway in the winter electrically.
That's amazing.
And here's the thing.
Yeah.
This was made by General Electric in the 1970s. Now, you might be like, well, okay, I want a 1980s model or a 1990s model.
Right.
No. They stopped. They were making them when the oil crisis hit the U.S. in the 70s because, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Oil was so expensive. And then once the crisis was over, they're like, oh, we're not going to make those anymore. That was dumb.
That's insidious.
But they work.
That's it just shows you how evil it was.
Yeah.
And if the oil crisis had never happened, there would have never be any of these people who ever caught the glimpse of an electric future.
Yes.
Right? Because again, without the crisis, without people being like, "Oh my God, we're going to have to live in a world without oil," you wouldn't have anyone starting to think about this kind of stuff and making something like that. Something like that.
Well, although we did have these back in the 1880s. But
Yes,
yeah.
but I mean, they were lost to time because
Right.
obviously it was overwritten with Henry Ford and the gas engine, and so most people, you kind of have to remind them that that electric cars were a thing back then. And I love how a lot of anti-electric car people are like, "This isn't a new technology. It's I had it in the 1800s and it died, not because it was bad." They're idiots, but yeah. Wow. to have an old relic like that was electric from the get-go, right? I thought it was converted from an old, gas version. It's so frustrating because we
What?
could have switched then. Do you know how easy our lives would be if we'd switched then? We'd have been like, oh, we need to cut our carbon emissions by 20%.
All right, so this next video is the co-CEO and chairman of Salesforce, which is a giant software company based in San Francisco. And he is talking about social democracy on CNBC, which you're like, wait a minute, social democracy and CNBC, those two things should never mix. Watch what happened.
Well, last night, I heard capitalism under attack as I've never heard it before. And it made me think that if it's dead, there are two visions. There's your vision, which is to resurrect it and make business the greatest platform for social change. And there's another vision, which is that the government has to step in because the billionaires have screwed it up so badly. Tell us how to get that not to happen.
I think both are probably right, actually. But we need a new capitalism. We need a capitalism that's more fair, more equitable, more sustainable capitalism. Capitalism that values not just all shareholders, but also all stakeholders. And if we can put those things together, I think it can be a new capitalism and be very exciting for everybody.
I do worry, Mark, that in the vacuum of what you're talking about, I heard last night about big tech having to be broken up simply because it's got tremendous power. Not even that the power is being used unwisely. But where are you when it comes down to breaking up Facebook, breaking up Amazon, breaking up Alphabet? Aren't these great American companies that hire a lot of people?
Well, you know how I feel, Jim. Facebook is the new cigarettes. It's addictive. It's bad for you.
Change.
Jim, they're after your kids.
That's not fair.
And also,
people can
Jim,
change, Mark.
Look
people
at the
can
political
change.
ads that are going on. There's, not a commitment to trust and truth. And now they're commingling the data of all of their acquisitions. Facebook probably should be broken up because they're using these assets in a way to further manipulate even more people. I think that there needs to be change.
Yeah, so Jim Cramer is like, his head's going to explode. He's basically
His head's almost always going to explode.
He's
though.
saying basically, if you do this, you're not taking care of your shareholders. And what Mark is talking about is taking care of the stakeholders,
right.
which he says, for instance, we're in San Francisco and there's a big homeless population. So that is one of our stakeholders. We have to make sure that we take care of these people. And Jim is like, what about that?
I mean,
So then Mark Benioff says, well, I mean, since we've become a company, since we've been IPO'd as a stock, we've gone up 3,500%. So I think we've done very well by our shareholders. Like, what else would you like us to do?
right. And so then this idea that you could have a company that's like, hey, we're an entity that exists in the real world.
Right.
Maybe we should take a look at the real world problems that, we might cause or have have a lot of impact.
I just love
We
that
have a lot of profits.
Instead of him having this conversation and the rest of the guys on the CNBC panel going like, very interesting point. Thank you there, Mark.
They're going like,
they're
well, you can't do that. What about your
how did he get on this show? Like, if he wasn't the CEO of a giant corporation,
Right.
they would have never allowed him on the show.
Can we talk about accredited investors for a minute?
Sure. Do you think our viewers know what accredited investors
I
are?
don't think anybody knows what this is except for accredited investors, because this is something that we've actually started to hear about. I think the first foray that we heard about it was when we were talking about Wonder Capital.
Right.
Wonder Capital is this great company where basically you're going to be putting in money into a fund that's going to be putting out loans for solar roofs,
Right.
or well, not solar roofs, but solar panels on people's roofs or
Right.
companies
Yep.
or anything. And then it'll be paid back over time from the
energy.
the energy, obviously. But the problem was, and the reason a lot of people couldn't sign up was that you had to be an accredited investor.
Right. And accredited investor is just a fancy word for being wealthy. You had to basically have $250,000 of income per year, or $1 million in liquid assets. And by liquid assets, I don't mean your house. I mean like cash in the bank. And so most people, unless you're in the 1% or whatever, aren't accredited. So that means you can't do this. So all those people out there, when we pitched it to you, who are like, yeah, let me sign up,
Right.
they would contact them, and Wonder Capital would have to say sorry.
But the thing is, it wasn't Wonder Capital's fault.
No.
In fact, it wasn't Wonder Capital's decision.
No.
It was the decision
SEC.
of the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission.
Now, let me just, you might be saying, well, wait, Zach, that means I can't buy stock? No, you
Oh,
you can go buy stock.
as
You can
much as you want.
Go get the Robinhood app.
Yeah, go take a mortgage out on your house. You can buy all the
Go
stock you want.
go gamble all you want, and mostly go to a legal casino and gamble.
Gamble as
right?
much as you
Go
want.
get some lottery tickets. Most states have
Yeah.
it, right? But
Bankrupt yourself on that.
they don't care. But go and try and do some kind of investment that involves something like Wonder Capital or
Angel investing.
or private stock in a company that hasn't gone public yet and you'd like to trade it or something. You can't do that unless you're accredited.
Oh, no. You're too poor for that. You're too poor. You
Well,
can't
no, I
even
think that-
touch that.
I-
You can't even look at
I
it. You're
think
not,
that-
your brain isn't big enough.
Right. I think the SEC's argument
Is that it was protecting.
right, protecting you, right, from like unscrupulous capitalists or something. But again, you can go buy stock in any company you want.
You could buy all the stock you want, right?
Right.
The SEC doesn't step in and be like, "Hey, we've noticed that you've been buying a lot of stock.
Right.
We just wanted to
And
make
not only
sure
that-
that your portfolio is
Not-
balanced.
not only that, you
and
can
that
buy
you're not throwing away your money.
You can buy stock on margin, which is you can borrow money and buy stock with it. How dangerous is that? You're allowed to do that, but you can't do accredited investments. So, yeah, that's just it's
It's
and what
something
it
that
is
we've
is
been learning more about.
that is what rich people did. They got together and they're like, how can we keep the rest of the people from getting rich? Let's
got an idea.
let's call it accredited investor. That sounds good.
And it's so funny because you wonder why are all the rich people always so rich? Like
Yeah.
it's very rare that you meet
It's a
someone
club.
who's like halfway up. It just seems like you're either really, really wealthy or you're just a working guy like everybody else.
No, it's a game. It's a rigged game.
It's really a rigged game, and it's super terrifying.
Yeah. Let's show some more CNBC stuff.
Yeah.
This is Tasha Keeney. She is an ARK Invest analyst, and she's really awesome at analyzing things like Tesla and automation. So check this out.
So at ARK Invest, we're long-term investors. So any one quarter, shouldn't change our long-term thesis too much. I think what we're excited to hear about on this call, first we'd love to hear an update on the full self-driving program, what kind of progress they think they're making with that. They've said that by the end of 2019 they'll be feature complete, launching commercial service in 2020 for autonomous taxis. Long term, we've looked at Tesla gross margins, which I think are a concern for investors this quarter. And we've actually predicted using Wright's Law, which is a law that we use to predict many innovative technologies. We think by the end of 2020 that Tesla should be able to achieve a 30% gross margin on the Model 3.
You guys were selling shares, though, coming into the quarter, is that right?
Yes, I'm actually glad you brought that up. So this was more of a portfolio management thing. So in certain of our funds, the restrictions that our client accounts have mean that we have to sell once it gets to a certain percent. So we're allowed to buy up to 10% of the fund in any one name, and if it appreciates a great amount, then we'll sell off. So Tesla was actually up 30% relative to the other names in the fund, so we took profits.
So it was just an arbitrary kind of portfolio
Exactly.
rule-based bit of trimming.
Exactly, it was not a change in conviction.
All right, well, Tesla right now is spiking. It's up 11% in the after-hours trade. We should have all of the details around that report in just a moment. But Tasha, how important is China to the story here?
I think China is very important. Tesla is an exponential growth story, and China hitting is what could sort of tick this off.
Yeah, the revenue, sorry to interrupt, Tasha, just want to mention some of these numbers as we wait for Phil to dive into them a little deeper. But the EPS of 78 cents is quite a significant beat in terms of what was expected. Revenue, $6.3 billion. That's essentially in line, down a little bit year over year. And we're looking...
Just look at the EBITDA margin of 13.9%. It was a big jump. Probably was where a lot of the numbers were made in the cash flow margin.
Stock up, as we said, 10.3%. In terms of the deliveries, what are you looking out for on that, Tasha?
Well, we already have the delivery numbers, so we know that those came in slightly below estimates. They were about 97,000 compared to, say, 99. But I think overall, revenue, we expected it to be a bit lower because of the Model 3. And again, those long-term margins are what we care about. So we think that, Tesla said they could achieve a 25% gross margin on these cars. We think it could be higher at 30. So we think this, EVs are really the long-term potential of the auto market. The auto market, sales are down, but electric vehicles are picking up, and Tesla's the leader in that market.
15% decline quarter over quarter in operating expenses. I mean, any sense of whether that was, well more exaggerated than you would expect? I mean, was that something you would have been looking for?
I think that's certainly going to be a surprise for investors. Yeah. I think, it goes to say that Tesla's really focused on these numbers. I think that one thing that I'd like to hear about on the call that's not talked about enough is the autonomous driving business, to go back to that. I don't think any analysts are taking this into account. And we think this is a market that should be worth $2 trillion. It could add thousands of dollars to Tesla's stock price.
Phil LeBeau is back with us and has been diving through some of the numbers. Phil, what jumps out to you?
Well, Wilf, they're still kind of crunching the numbers back in the newsroom. You see this big spike here? That's because the adjusted EPS is $1.86 a share. We should point out that a number of analysts said that they expected a loss of 42 cents a share. So some of our folks who crunch the numbers are trying to reconcile the big difference there between the $1.86 adjusted, while many people were expecting a loss. Revenue, as you mentioned, did come in a tad under expectations at $6.30 billion. The automotive margins, GAAP automotive margins, 22.8%. And a couple of notes here regarding their production. Trial production in China from the plant in Shanghai, that has begun. Remember, they're expecting that to ramp up as we head into the end of the year and have some deliveries in China. And also, the Model Y is ahead of schedule. They are expecting production to begin by the summer of next year.
Now, I think you might have noticed there that Tasha keeps getting interrupted. Just as she's in the middle to ask her question, she starts her first sentence and then hold on. Oh, something just came into my ear from a producer who told me to cut you off so that I can make a point about something with numbers in it.
This bothers me to no end. I mean, I know that some of you get bothered when we interrupt each other on the show, but it's usually to get the same point out. And it's another reason why I like watching the Joe Rogan podcast, is because he just lets people talk for hours on end if he wants to, if they want to. They will just be able to get out their points, and then when they're done talking, he asks a question, or he might interrupt and correction, but he's never shutting people up. And this is what I hate about CNBC. This is what I hate about a lot of news shows, is that they're just shutting people up. They won't let them answer the question that they asked, and it's so crazy that they do that.
Yeah, I mean, here she was trying to keep on her message about autonomy adding thousands of dollars to Tesla's stock price. She says that analysts are not getting the autonomy and robotaxi part of the Tesla story, and yet they don't even, when she says that, they don't even can you explain that?
What do you mean by that?
She just said thousands of dollars, and they're just like, okay, so let's look at this number.
Right. They don't refute it. They don't say, I don't think that that's going to happen because I know a lot about computers, and I think that this won't work because they should be using LiDAR, which would have been something that they could have said. Right? I wouldn't have been like, well, I mean, obviously I would have said something like, well, I think they probably don't know a lot about LiDAR if they think that that's the silver bullet solution to this. But that could have been something that you could interject with, that you could say hey, your thesis doesn't make sense because of X.
It's just so obvious that CNBC is there to give you some kind of story that they've already prearranged and scripted. And they put on these other people, these analysts, so that it can seem like, well, see, we've got people here.
And she's the only one who thinks this.
She's
crazy.
Unless you are really paying attention to what she says and kind of already know what she's saying, you would be like, I don't get it. Because she wasn't allowed time to explain it.
Right. People who watch the show get it because our shows are an hour long.
Right.
And there's a reason for that. It's because we didn't think that we could condense it all down into 1 minute to be like, hey, we're going to tell you Tesla news and Tesla's doing this and goodbye. Right. That's not enough time. We needed to explain it because this is a brand new, crazy new thing of electric cars.
Can I talk about this next story?
Yes.
CRISPR.
Yeah.
This is a crazy brand new thing. It's only been out since about 2013, right? So CRISPR is this, and I kind of challenge you, if Thanksgiving's coming up and the family will be around, right? And ask at the dinner table, anyone know what CRISPR is? I'll bet you'd be lucky if a nephew or an uncle or niece knows this. CRISPR is a way to edit the human genome. You basically,
or any genome.
Any genome. You basically, they found ways to take a protein that will look along the strand for a matching part of the protein and matching part of the DNA and snip it. The problem is, at the moment, it's a new technology, it's only about 10% accurate. So when you snip it, you're also probably getting an A, a G, or a T or something that you didn't want. And it's going you can't do that. You can't just be like, I don't need this T. It throws off the entire chain. So It's not super accurate now, but it is amazing technology. Well, the reason why Elon retweeted this about CRISPR is because some scientists, some researchers have come up with a way to make it even more accurate by using a new protein. Obviously, this isn't the final step, but it's getting better. And this should be something that we are talking about in schools for kids to get excited about. And I know they're probably doing it at some lucky high school with the biology teacher that's really talking it up. But for the most part, I'll bet if you go into most schools and you said, "Good morning, students.
Tell me
Today,
about CRISPR."
How many of you know about CRISPR? Put your hands up. Most people wouldn't put their hands up because most teachers and people don't know about it. What I love about Elon on his Twitter, he's not just talking about the things that he knows everything about. Batteries, spaceships. Well, okay, he knows about a lot of things.
He knows about a lot of things.
But I mean, this is not in his normal wheelhouse, right? This is
right. He doesn't
do
edit
this every
genes
day.
in his spare time, as far as I know.
But he's interested in it, and he's tweeting about it, and he's talking about it. And I just think that this is something that's super important. We should all be, even if we're not going to be experts in everything, we should all be keeping up as much as we can on the latest science.
Right.
And this science, if I think, is probably going to be one of the biggest changes to human medicine, to the human body, of any discovery that we've had.
Right.
So we should keep up with it.
There's a chance that we're going to be able to fix a lot of diseases using
Yes.
CRISPR. There's a chance we can get rid of a lot of diseases.
Yes.
But there's also horrible other options
Right.
in the CRISPR bag. Like, just like with any power tool,
Right.
like, oh, it's great, I can cut this board. And it's like, oh no, this is also great.
Right.
My arm.
I mean, I
right?
think CRISPR is kind of the equivalent of going from, hand saws to electric circular saws.
Right.
Like, this is just going to be an amazing technology.
It's a very dangerous tool in the wrong hands. And yeah, that's why we need to be talking about it. And our lawmakers are not really talking about it. Our lawmakers are busy talking about, I don't know what they're talking about. To be
They're
honest.
wasting our time.
Yeah.
We spend every day, if you listen to the news, talking about stuff that doesn't matter.
Right.
Let's talk about the stuff that does matter. Let's talk about science. And the reason we're not talking about science in the news most of the time is they're like, first of all, the reporters and the anchor people don't know anything about it. And when they do try and talk about it, they dumb it down so low
Right.
that you can't have a conversation anymore.
Well, because
if
they
you were to
don't
talk to a
understand it.
scientist, let's say
Right.
you're a CRISPR scientist,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well,
Right.
tell me
I
about
know
CRISPR.
how to- I know
but,
how
but
to-
make it, tell me about CRISPR, but pretend it's Cheerios.
Right.
Then you'd be like, I can't.
Right, that's
describe
not,
it
it's
that
not
way.
Cheerios,
Right.
You idiot. Just come up a little bit
Right.
higher. And this is the problem with most television, is that it always goes to the lowest common
Well, and
denominator.
the other thing is, I guess for some reason reporters think that they should go to school to be reporters and nothing else. But you have to be a well-rounded human so that you can understand a scientist if he wants to talk about genes.
And that's what I've been so much learning about life as I've been going through life, is that, you can go to school for something, but unless you have a broader background of life experience, you're not going to be the most effective human.
Right.
Because you're just going to have big gaps in your knowledge and understanding, and you really need to hit those high points. Sand down your knowledge, so that way you're getting down to the core root of truth.
Yeah. I love YouTube for that reason, because in 20 minutes, not that I'll be an expert in 20 minutes, but in 20 minutes, I can get exposed to a bunch of really cool videos about a certain topic so that I can start to know where else to look.
Right. I know. And you could be a little bit more educated, and I mean, the other cool thing is that you can also be learning about specific things that have happened in history, because, history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but it rhymes. And so you have things that are very similar, and you can be like, this is similar to that. Therefore, if that, then this, you can
Exactly.
understand the world so much better.
Another favorite part of YouTube is the fact that you can see the date it was published. So instead of looking at an encyclopedia from 20 years ago or something, you can get the latest information. You can get a podcast or an interview that just happened with cutting edge technology.
Right. And you don't have to sit there and read it.
You want to see some cutting edge stuff?
Yeah.
Check this out. We're going to see the Model 3 that we talked about during the show on the test track actually driving. Look at this. This is the Gigafactory in Shanghai just days ago. And this is a Model 3 made in that factory driving out onto the new test track. It's happening. So all those people who are like, Elon just says things are going to happen. He pretends it and it never does. Well, this time he did not say it was going to happen in October.
No.
I do not recall him
No, I
saying
don't remember
that
that
at
at
all.
all.
He is surprised at how fast it's happening. But
Yeah.
you know why it's happening so fast? Because he pushed people. When you push brilliant people to go faster and harder, a lot of times they do. And in fact, a lot of times they get you further than you even thought you could, because once they get in the mindset of like, let's get to work every day and really push it, then you get a lot done. Whereas if you're like, okay, in 20 years, we'll have moved it this far, so slow down, everybody.
Right.
And that's the way it is in many corporations. It makes them look bad if your team moves too fast.
Right.
All right, so here is some Tesla cam footage. This is a Model 3 owner, Rajetta, and he was involved in an accident a few months ago where a motorcyclist collided with the rear end of his Model 3. You might have seen this on YouTube or on the news. And he thought he was in a lot of trouble because he had no way to prove that he didn't cause this accident. I mean, this guy was really hurt on the motorcycle. He's wearing a helmet, but he's only wearing a T-shirt. So you saw him skid across like multi-lane highway.
I don't even
guy,
want to think about
I'm
it.
sure he's hurt. So he was worried that prosecutors were going to blame him for this accident because according to witnesses, they said it was this guy's fault. And he was like, well, I was just driving.
Right.
Luckily, his Tesla cam footage shows what you just saw here, which is that basically the motorcyclist just looks like he rammed into the back of him,
right.
And then skidded off. And prosecutors then, once they saw this footage, dropped the case against him, and that's the end.
That's the end of
It
that.
saved him. Can you imagine? I mean, how much money and I don't know, maybe even criminal damages would have been charged against him for if he had been at fault?
Right. That's troubling. Like, and it's troubling that you're relying on witnesses. Like, I know that witnesses used to be the best thing you'd really have, besides like hard evidence of an event throughout history because we didn't have cameras. Now that you have cameras.
Do you know what these cameras proved? One of the witnesses said they saw the whole thing, and when the prosecutors looked at the footage, they realized that by the location of that witness and where they were in relation to the car, that they could not have seen any of it. So that basically they were just going by the aftermath. And that's so common in accidents like this. You're like, oh my God, I saw a motorcycle, I saw a car, so I guess it's his fault.
And it's not the witness's fault. It's not like they have this
No.
like, oh, I'm going to make up a false thing.
Right.
It's that in a moment like that,
you just see some
human
sparks.
cognition is not a good camcorder
right.
at all. It's like, oh, there were sparks and an explosion. And so I'm going to fill in the rest of the details because I'm a brain and I've experienced the world for, some odd years. So I'll be able to fill in all the details that are completely false.
Yeah. And the fact that Tesla Cam captures all around the car. I mean, if he had had just a regular front-facing dash cam, it wouldn't have caught this.
You're in trouble.
So, I mean, this is amazing.
Yeah.
All right. So I think you remember about 5 months ago, we told you about Audi and Airbus. They were getting together to make a cool thing called the pop-up concept, which was you drive your car and then a drone to come pick you up and drive you and fly you across the city.
Yeah,
or whatever.
you'd be going to pod and then, well, it doesn't matter anymore because it's gone.
Wait, what?
Yep, they broke up. They said that they have stopped.
These aren't like teenagers.
No. They said they have stopped all work on the pop-up concept that was being.
No, this is Audi and Airbus. These are two giant companies. You don't just
No, they
break
stopped.
up.
They stopped working on it.
It was
They're
they
done.
just started in May.
Yeah, they're done. Really teenagery though. Yeah, like doesn't that feel like
it does?
Oh yeah, we're gonna work on this thing. It's so great and the thing, and then
I'm tired of
we're
it
tired
now.
of it. We're not gonna do it. It's almost screams like nepotism to me.
know,
Like it's like,
weird.
well, my brother-in-law decided that he didn't want to live in this place anymore, so he's moving on. This project's dead, so everyone pack up your stuff and leave. I don't understand. Like I don't know. That obviously wasn't what happened, but I mean,
No.
it's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
Why would you do this and then stop it?
I don't know.
Wouldn't you at the beginning be like, okay, so if we're gonna do this, we better be real serious. So what are the challenges? What are the difficulties?
I mean, before you signed a memorandum of agreement, you must have thought about it a little bit and talked to your team and been like, is this going to be good for us? And then if someone said, let's just stop working with them, wouldn't you be like, let's wait a minute. This is a big concept.
we gotta keep
This
doing
is
it.
Airbus. This is Audi. Like,
And this makes me a little bit worried about the very recent partnership between Porsche and Boeing. I'm a little worried about that partnership since it's basically the same thing, right? You have a German car manufacturer and a U.S. Airplane manufacturer, and
well, I mean, Airbus is European, but yeah,
okay, whatever. I don't know. I'm not a plane guy. Yeah, that's kind of troubling.
I know.
You're like, well,
No.
Yikes.
All right, so a lot of you wrote to us and said, like, oh my God, how did things go with that power outage that you had last week? Because wasn't it a week ago today?
It was a week ago.
It was just like, it was a little rainy.
It could happen again.
So let's
the
remind you.
good news, the good news is if it did happen again, we'd still be covered by the power
So
wall.
let me remind you, if you didn't see it, we were doing the end of the Tesla Time News. A tree limb came down and took out the power line that goes to the house. And so Normally that would mean show would have stopped, lights would have gone off, the camera would have stopped. But instead, what happened was
nothing really bad happened. The lights flickered for just like it. There's like
it wasn't even all of them. It was just like one of them.
It was I think it was one of them that takes a particular kind. We have all kinds of different lights around us. Yeah.
So everything stayed on, and that's because we have 4 power walls that were just installed back in August, and instantaneously they flick on if there's a problem with the grid. And
good stress test.
Yeah.
I'd say.
So what happened was basically just a tree got overweighted with wet leaves, and then a wind came along and took down a lot of trees that night all across Massachusetts. I think there was 100,000 people.
No, that was 2 nights before.
No, but there was another. So 2 nights before there was a big,
really windy day.
Right.
And then 2 days later it rained, so all the weakened trees then got heavier and fell over.
Yep. So we had a lot of other people that lost power that day as well. And so I called the power company after the show, and about an hour later, they sent out a crew, and I think that's because one of the trees that came down covered the road, so it was like it rose the priority level.
Police showed up. And had to block the road off. So that's that raised the priority.
So at about midnight, there was a guy on a pole, on a ladder fixing the wire on the pole. The whole time we had power. The whole time I'm watching our app so that we could see what was going on. And so we were without power for about 3 hours from the grid, but the whole time we were using ours. So we started with I think it was 72%, 78%, 79% on the battery. We immediately went out and unplugged the cars because we were charging the cars. So the cars were charging for about an hour
while we were finishing up the show.
And we unplugged those. And so we were using, I think, 6 kilowatts at the time. And then we dropped it down to about 2 kilowatts. And we used about 10% of the battery. I mean, we could have gone, if we had really reserved our power, just had the fridge on and a couple other things, we could have been off the grid for, I would say, easily 2 or 3 days.
Right.
But yeah, it just
kicked in.
I didn't even know when the power came back on. Like it just, because it's all seamless. And I got to tell you, this is a game changer, because normally in the winter in New England and in the fall, you get all sorts of weird power outages from storms and stuff.
Tree limbs falling, right?
And so, I don't know, it raises the value of the house, first of all. Like, I'm just thinking, a lot of people don't even consider that. They're just considering the cost or whatever. But if you had a Powerwall and you're selling your house, it's like, oh, well, yeah, you have a backup generator.
Right. Well, and I mean, you have 4 Powerwalls. That's a lot.
Yeah, the 13.5 kilowatt hours each, so that is 52 kilowatt hours of energy.
Right.
That's like half a Tesla battery.
Right, and you can wire it up so that only certain circuits in your house are powered by the Powerwall. So it could just be powering like the fridge and some particular lights that you want to keep on, and that could, 4 Powerwalls. If you would unplugged everything, shut everything off except for the fridge. The fridge could have just stayed on.
That's
for
the other
weeks.
cool part is you can walk around with the app and see exactly how much power you're using at all times of the day. Like right now in your house, the only way you can probably do that, I'm guessing, is if you walk down to your meter and look at it. And how many people are going to do that?
And then you can't, what are you going to do? You're going to go switch off a lamp and then go walk outside to your meter and look at it and be like, I think it's turning a little bit slower, don't you?
Right. It's really
a manual,
cool.
Meter, at least where we live.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. I'm so impressed. So we're going to be making a video about the Powerwalls. I'm really glad actually that we didn't do it the day they installed them, because now we know a lot more about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I know another shout out to Tesla. They installed 4 Powerwalls in less than a day. And mine is not an easy install, because I put one of them up in the pantry of my, right off of the dining room so that you can see it, because it's signed by Elon and the rest. And so I was like, okay, no, that one goes here and then 3 go down here. Like, it was a complicated setup.
Mm-hmm.
They got it, 2 guys got it done in a day. So, it's not like something that'll take you out for a week or something. It's really incredible.
And yeah, it saved the show last week.
Yeah.
You would have had a show that would have just gone like, and so anyway, and it would have cut, and you would have just had a black.
Yeah, we would.
Show. We'd be in trouble.
Yeah, we didn't. That's a really good point, because we would have had to worry about, first of all, how to end the show, but also how the boys could edit the next day. We didn't have to worry about that. We're like, if the power's still out tomorrow, we'll have power.
Right. It was great.
Anyway, thank you to you guys, because you're kind of like our lifeline there, our power line. You guys support the show. You power the show by being there for us. And that's how we can do this every week. We don't even think about not doing the show, because we want to get the show out for you guys.
Right. I kind of had this feeling. It was like a rainy day. It was a very nap-oriented kind of day in terms of weather. And part of me was just sort of like, maybe we don't do it this week. And then I thought about you guys, and I was like, why wouldn't I do it? You know?
Yeah.
There's a reason we've done this show 164 weeks in a row. Every week we've done this show. And
there's some exciting stuff coming up.
Oh, yeah.
You know that the Tesla pickup truck's coming up. And we know it too. And we're going to be showing you that probably. I mean, I hope we'll be one of the first to show it to you.
Yeah. I hope it'll be a live stream.
Yeah.
So, clear your calendars
we're
for the rest of next month. And
yeah, we just got to wait till Elon tweets it out. But we're pretty sure we know when it's going to happen within a few days. So, yeah.
I can't wait.
So exciting.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks so much for being our Patreons and supporting us. And now you know.